Hey everybody, Steve from Pinball Room. Welcome back. Today we're going to dive in and talk more about stepper motors. If you've been following my series, you realize, hey, we've already talked about stepper motors, Steve. Why are we talking about this again? Well, if you've also been paying attention, you realize we never quite figured out the last piece of the puzzle. And now we've got it all figured out thanks to some help from the guys in the community that I've been leaning on. So I'm going to go through and tell you from start to finish how to set up a stepper motor and how to get it configured inside the MPF software so it will actually be triggered off events that happen during your game and how you can make all that work. All right? So let's just dive right into it. First thing first, let's talk about what we're going to need to be able to go through and follow along and do this video if you want. Obviously, you need a stepper motor. Now, I've got a NEMA 17 stepper motor that I bought off Pololu.com. Okay, they're a great resource. And I also bought one of their controller boards. And they use a control board system that's called their Tic controller. I'm not sure what Tic stands for. Something fun, I'm sure. But this is an example of one of their Tic control boards. Okay, and what you're going to do, and what I recommend you do before you even bother hooking up your stepper motor into your pinball machine, let's just start by taking your stepper motor, following the wire diagrams they have like this one. Okay, you're going to have 4 colored wires coming out of your stepper motor, red, blue, green, and black. Following this diagram, you're going to wire that into these terminals. There's an A1, A2, B1, B2, and there's also voltage in and ground in, right, for your voltage. So for a NEMA 17 motor, if you're doing the same size, you're going to want a 12 volt source. We're going to hook into our 12 volt power supply. That's going to come from our wiring harness into here, a direct 12 volt, okay? And then those other 4 wires are going to get connected to the coils. Every stepper motor has 2 coils. So A represents one coil, B represents the other. So you need to wire them up according to that diagram. Don't worry if you maybe get your colors a little bit off. As long as your A wires are going to the A terminals, doesn't matter which A terminal, and the B wires are going to the B terminal, doesn't matter which wire, you'll be good. If you have somehow happen to take like a red wire and the black wire and put those together in a coil, either it's not going to work at all or it's going to be really wonky, noticeably wrong, erratic behavior when you turn the stepper motor on, okay? So make sure you're getting the colors paired and into a coil, all right? Once you do that, you're also going to want to download and install what they call their Tic Control Center. It's a simple little application that installs all the drivers you need in your system to run this. Okay, so this is a prerequisite to get it working with your machine through MPF software. You have to have this downloaded and installed on the machine that will be running your final game code. All right. Now it's actually an interface. All right, and it allows you to go through and log in here. If we look, as you plug it in, it'll show you, in the drop down a device you can connect to. Okay, and there's a number. Write that number down. You're going to need it here in a little bit. Okay, that number is kind of the unique identifier for the actual circuit board you're connecting to. And then you've got like the ability down here, a bunch of information as far as voltage coming in. You'll be able to see how much voltage is coming in, what state it's in. You can de-energize, which is like to turn it off basically, right, and allow you to move it freely, or you can resume, which is to re-energize your stepper motor. Once it's energized, you can go here with the set target control and kind of slide it back and forth and watch it move. You can also, in the set target position, type in very specific integers. This is going to be good because you're going to need to go through and figure out exactly, okay, what numeric value, from 0 to what do I need to move it to get it to the position I want. For me, I want it to move 1 step, and I played around and found out that 50 is, a quarter turn, which is exactly what I need to make it move 1 step. So we'll play around with that. Also, inside input and motor settings, probably the most important thing, if you watch my earlier videos, it took me a little while to figure this one out. I was being a little dense. Over here on the right under motor, current limit. You want to make sure that is set to the number of maximum milliamps that your stepper motor can run. Okay? If it's higher than that, you can overpower your motor and burn it out. If it's lower than that, well, you're just not going to be getting full strength. So just set it to the max, and that way we'll know we're going to be in a safe range for that motor. Okay? And once you've got all that set, it kind of configures it to the board. Then you can close out of that app. And in fact, you need to make sure that app is not running when you run Mission Pinball Framework, or else it's going to give you an error saying access denied. Some other program already has access to this device. Your control board can only be ran by one system at a time, or one application at a time. So shut down the Pololu Tic Center for now. And then we're going to go through and talk about the actual code inside MPF. All right, so let's jump on over into MPF. So to run a stepper motor in MPF, in your core config file, you're going to need to go through and add a section at the very top up here under hardware. If you remember, we had added platform fast, driver boards fast. That's because that's declaring exactly what type of circuit boards we're using, because every circuit board, P-Rock and fast, are set up slightly differently. So MPF needs to know which one you're using. Well, it's the same with the stepper motor. Okay. Again, I told you I'm using Pololu stepper motors, and more specifically, I'm using the Pololu Tic Control Board. That's the most important thing here also, right? You can get whatever manufacturer stepper motor you want, but then the control board, we need to know which one it is, and we need to declare it here inside the software. So mine is being declared as simply Pololu_Tic. Okay. The MPF documentation online gives you the labels you'll need for a few of the other brands that are out there, but if you don't see yours listed, then it's not going to be supported. So make sure you're grabbing one of the ones that are listed inside the MPF docs, all right? Once we've declared that, so MPF knows how to communicate to the circuit board, we also are going to add a section for steppers, just like we added a section for diverters, for coils, for switches, for ball devices. We're going to add a section for steppers. Again, this is in our core config file. And then inside steppers, we're going to name our stepper. You can have multiple in here. I just have one. I've called mine staircase stepper. There are some there's one required value that has to be put inside. Okay, that's the very next one here. That's the number. And you'll see I've got this long number. If you recall, a minute ago I asked you to write down the number you saw inside that drop down inside the Pololu Tic Control Center. That is how you identify your control board, and that is what needs to be put here inside MPF as well. So it knows, okay, we're using Pololu Tic, and then this is just like the drop down inside that software. We pick the one that's available. Here we have to tell it explicitly, this is the number of the board I'm using. So if you ever swap out your board for some reason, you'll need to find the new number from the new board inside the Tic Control Center, and then you're going to need to update your config file to have that new number, all right? Otherwise, it's going to be trying to talk to the old board, and it's not the exact same old board, right? Okay, hopefully that all makes sense. That's really the only required thing that just has to be there, or else it just simply will not work at all. Beyond the number, the other things that are required for you to declare in here, and they're not really required, I guess, according to the docs, but without them, nothing's going to work. So in my view, they're kind of required also. You need to declare how you're going to be homing or resetting your stepper motor. So there's a homing mode. You can do either hardware or switch. We're using switch. I'm not super familiar with exactly how hardware works, so we're not going to talk on that one right now. But I think this is probably one of the most common ways people go about this. So you're going to go through and add a switch. I've got a micro switch that I added in here, and it's set up underneath my stepper motor, so every time my stepper motor, the steps rotate to a certain position, it hits this and closes the switch, and that way I know I'm in a good position. I've wired it up just like any other switch. It goes to my fast control boards in a switch input with the ground return, and that way I know when we're at home position. That's important because when MPF starts up, before you even hit the start button, it just starts up and initializes itself. It sees a stepper motor, and if this switch is not closed, it's going to assume it's not in the right position. It's going to start turning that stepper motor in that direction we define, either clockwise or counterclockwise, and it's going to turn until the switch closes. Okay, and once it closes, then it's going to say, okay, we must be in the right position. Okay, so it's assuming you have everything set up properly, right, to where when that switch closes, you are in a good position to start. And then it's going to allow you to actually push the start button and start a game. Okay, so again, homing mode switch. The next line is homing switch. So you have to go through and define that switch in your core config file as a switch, just like any other switch. I gave mine the name of S_stepper_home for stepper home, the switch. I wired it all in, and then I added that in here. So now whenever that gets closed, it'll know it, it'll stop moving it. Then we've got homing direction. That could be important for you also. In fact, it almost certainly is. When MPF starts up and starts to try to home the device, it's going to start turning one direction or the other. Okay? And so, again, I recommend you hook up your stepper motor into your playfield without it really connected to anything almost, other than maybe just like your base assembly. You need to allow it to turn and make sure nothing's going to break. Okay? So if you need to be very careful which direction your mech turns, the very first time, don't really have it connected to anything that could end up making it get broken. All right. So I removed my homing switch because it goes the wrong direction. It kind of bends it the wrong way. I turned it on, let it go, and I saw that it was going down. So I had to change mine from counterclockwise to clockwise. And now when it starts out at homes, it's going the right direction. So then I could safely put it in my switch. And then when it hits the switch, it stops in the right spot. Okay. So that's homing mode, switch, and direction. The next thing you really need to worry about is named positions. Okay, the named positions is literally just that. What are the positions you want your stepper motor to go to? Forward a half turn, back 3/4 turn, forward 2 turns, back to where do you want it to go to? We're going to put that in as a value. So again, if you go back to your Tic Control Center, what I did is I had my stepper motor outside of my machine, just hooked up to my laptop, and I played around with that, and I figured out, okay, how far is a quarter turn? Because for me, a quarter turn is what I need to do to move my staircase up one step. So I played around with that until I found that in the default settings, 50 is the value. If I go from 0 to 50, it moves a quarter turn. So I wrote down 50, and now that is my code is my first name position. Say 50. And then after that, you need to define what event the MPF software is going to be listening for. And so when that event happens, a certain mode completes, a certain mode starts, a switch is hit, something like that. When that event happens, you're going to write the name of that event down here next to my number 50. Whenever that event happens, it's then going to move my stepper motor to position 50, which is up a quarter step. Okay, does that make sense? I've also got another one here named 400 because I know it takes 400 turns to get my staircase to go one full staircase, I guess, one full amount, 5 steps, and dump out all my balls. So that's my second name position, which I named staircase move 6 steps because it's basically moving about 5 or 6 steps. Okay? You can add in as many different positions as you want with different values and different event names, right? And then every time one gets hit, one of those events fires, MPF is going to move that stepper motor that amount. Okay? Now you can bury these events. I have them right now just inside my base config file, inside my base mode, which is a mode that's running whenever you hit start. You could also put it in a mode-specific config file. So maybe you only want this really moving during like a multi-ball, or you have a specific mode for this one part of your play field, and when it's moving, like you can bury those events inside a certain mode, so they only get triggered during that mode. Okay, that's one of the things that's kind of cool about MPF. I'm learning more and more is the ability to split out different modes to control different things, and allows you to keep your config files a little more organized. So instead of just having like one mode that tries to do everything and is like thousands and thousands and thousands of lines of code deep with potential conflicts, you can split it out into this multi-ball mode, or that multi-ball mode, or this game mode, or that wizard mode. And during those certain modes, certain events fire. They all have different names, and so you can be very specific. All right.
All right, and then last but not least, there's this last section here called platform settings. Now, when I very first was kind of playing around with this, I actually kind of ignored this and wasn't paying attention and thought I didn't really need these settings. And when I turned on my stepper motor, I was like, wow, why is my stepper motor suddenly so weak? Did I burn it out? What happened? Well, if you go through the Tic Control Center, if you remember, and you're playing with the values there, you can set what that maximum current limit is and the step mode. If you want to be doing full steps, half steps, quarter steps, eighths of a step, etc. And depending on the control board you have is just how fine of control and how many micro steps you're able to handle. Well, those settings will get saved to the board. They get like flashed onto the board itself to be used. But what I didn't realize is whenever MPF starts up, if you don't define any platform settings, it's going to go through and use a set of defaults, right? It makes perfect sense. Well, the step mode and the current limit has some default values inside MPF already, which puts the current limit down to like 400 and some odd value, 497, I believe, something like that, which for my stepper motor is about a quarter of the power that I'm used to running it on. So I assumed something happened with my stepper motor and it had just burnt out. But in the end, I just didn't have that setting set to the right value. So these two, there's other platform settings you can mess with, but these are the two core ones, and so far all I found that I really need to add to mine. So it's step mode, I'm keeping mine at 1, which is a solid step. I'm not worrying about the micro steps. The thing I've learned with micro steps, if you start going down to half steps, quarter steps, eighth of a step, it will make the movement a little bit smoother and much quieter. There's much less vibration in the machine, which is, at first I thought, wow, that's exactly what I want. I want it smoother and quieter. It also has an effect on the speed of the motor itself, though, as well, and slows it down considerably. Now, I'm still figuring things out. There's very likely a way through the speed and the acceleration settings to perhaps compensate for that. In fact, there most likely is. I've not played around with those quite yet, so I'm not talking to those in this video right now. But leaving it at step mode 1 and then having the current limit set to the proper limit for my stepper motor, having those defined inside here. Now when MPF goes through and loads up and starts the game, it's running the exact same way that it did during the Tic Control Center's application simulations that we were doing. Okay, so those are the last two values that you want to make sure you have set. Otherwise, it's going to be using the defaults, and the defaults most likely will not line up with your actual stepper motor. Okay,
that's kind of the core stuff. Beyond that, we got some other values in here. Okay, I've got a reset position, a reset event. Okay, in case for whatever reason I need to ever reset my stepper motor. Basically, it's the same as homing, but homing just happens when you very first initialize the game. Reset is a way for you during software code to force it to reset to a certain position, okay? Which is handy because maybe you say, I want mine to go out to a certain number, but then I want it to come back, okay? You can either put in a numeric value that has to go back, or you can simply tell it to reset itself and it will go back to that starting position, okay? And you can define the starting position. Is it 0, which is the most common, or it could be maybe you want to reset to 100 for some reason, not quite all the way back. Like it's all depends on your mech and what you're trying to do. Those are the options there, okay? Whew. All right, that's kind of fast and whirlwindy, but that is pretty much it. Whew. Okay, to summarize, get your stepper motor, wire it to your control board, download the Pololu Tic software, the control center, play around with it, make sure you've got it wired correctly, make sure you have the proper power source, okay? Go through and play around and figure out what are those integer values that you need to get it to the certain positions you want. Write those down. And then we go over to our config files. Inside the main config file, define it as a hardware device, add a stepper section, define your stepper with a name, define the actual number, the ID of this control board, right? And then set up your homing, your homing mode as a switch. Define the switch that you're going to be using for that. Define the direction you want it to move during the beginning to get into position. And then go through and declare those named positions. What are the different, turns that you want the stepper motor to do, and what events do you want to have firing that? Okay. Now, I should warn you, the default MPF stepper code only handles it going to absolute positions. By that I mean with the stepper motor, if you played around in the control center that Pololu Tic has, you'll notice you can start at 0. You can either go negative or positive numbers. Okay. And so I can either go to 50 or negative 50. If I go to 50, then I tell it to go to 50 again. Well, it says I'm already at 50. It's not going to move. So right now, the way my even my configs are set up is not exactly what I want for my staircase. Okay, for my staircase, every time this button gets hit, I want it to move up one staircase. Well, in the default MPF support for stepper motor, it's going to an absolute position of 50. Remember, I've got negative 200 to positive 200 is my range on my stepper motor by default. So if I start at 0, I've only got positive 200. MPF will not allow negative values, at least that I'm seeing. It's giving me errors. And so if I want to move forward 50, great, I can hit that. If I want to move forward another 50, I need to basically tell it to go to 100, right? 50 plus 50. And then I want to go to 150, then to 200. Well, my max is 200. I only got 4 balls in my stair at that point, right? If I want to add another ball, go up to 250, and then dump them all, I need to get up to 500 to 600. Well, the stepper motor config inside MPF is just going to tell it to go to absolute position 50 every time I hit this. So once it's done it once, it's never going to move it again. I need some custom software, which one of our buddies, Anthony Winkle, is going to give us, that I'll share out with you guys, which is going to allow us to make this be a relative movement. So every time it gets hit, it's going to move forward 50 steps, regardless of where it is. So instead of trying to move to position 50, it's going to move to the current position plus 50. Now, you can get around that a little bit by saying what the maximum position is inside MPF, but I want to go up, but I don't want mine to move to a certain position, to move to step 3. I want mine to always just move exactly up forward 50. And so that's a little bit of limitation, but we're going to get a little bit of help from Anthony Van Winkle, who's a coding genius. He's been contributing a lot to MPF, and he's going to help us go through and figure out that last bit. And once we have that, I will share that code through my channel as well. But yeah, that's the basics for a basic stepper motor, all you need to do. Sounds simple, right? And it really is. It's really not that bad once you understand it, okay? For me, the trick was understanding name positions, what these values exactly meant, and how to do the events through that. And honestly, a lot of it is kind of my own ignorance. The more you get into MPF, one of the key things people have been telling me to really figure out is understanding this whole system of an event player and how different things trigger different events and create events, and will send the message of a certain event through the system, and then the system's watching for that and listening for it, and based on that event, other things will happen. I get that in theory, but still understanding exactly okay, so am I declaring an event right now, or am I telling it to watch for an event? I wasn't sure if I needed to make up the name of an event, and then how do I make that event happen? I didn't realize I configured it earlier in my base mode, and then this is the part that's watching for it or listening for it. That's what's unclear for me. When am I sending an event out versus when am I telling it to listen for a certain event? I still don't quite have that square away in my head, so I'm still figuring all that part out. Hopefully that made sense, and the little summary maybe helped kind of bring it all back together. Now let's see it in action, shall we? Let's get the balls up here and have us hit a shot and watch it do its magic. So we start up MPF. It's going to go through and try to home the switch until I hit the homing switch. Okay, so once we hit the homing switch, it stops. Now we're going to start up the game. Start a ball. There we go, we locked the ball. So let's pretend the next ball comes out. And then we want it to go up a single switch so we can lock another ball. So we hit this switch, moves up one switch. We lock another ball. Let's pretend that we locked all the balls. And then with our sixth ball, let's say we start multi-ball right now. It's just this switch right here. Working. Pretty exciting. It's just about there, ready to actually play that cool feature. I can't wait. All right, guys, that's it for today. Stepper Motors 101. Hope that made sense. If you didn't, please leave questions in the comments down below. I'll respond to them. If I don't know the answers, which I probably won't, I will ask and I'll get somebody smarter to give me the answer and we'll share it with you. But yeah, so if you're looking for stepper motors and control boards, they're in my bill of materials on that sheet. And the code snippets we have here inside the video. If you need any other code snippets or anything, like let me know. I'm happy to throw it up somewhere on my public drives. You guys can download it and take a look at it. But yeah, stepper motors are fun. Yeah, I really like them. They're very precise. They've got good power, good torque. All right, so yeah, thanks for watching. Hope you've really been enjoying this series. It's been a lot of fun for me trying to learn how to figure it all out. But we're getting really close on this build, guys. Made a new goal. March, Texas Pinball Festival. It's really far away, but I'm going to be making the long drive, or 2 days of driving, and we're going to take our completed Led Zeppelin pinball machine. It'll have final inserts, final lighting, final artwork. It's going to be gorgeous. We're going to have it there for everybody to play. So if you're going to be at TPF, watch out for us because I'm going to be there. All right, keep an eye out. Love to meet you guys and give you a chance to watch you play the game and see what you think of it. It's going to be in a completed state. I'm going to make sure the goal is to have final artwork, video, audio, hopefully pretty solid game code, lighting, inserts, everything. It's going to look gorgeous. That's the plan. That's the goal we're setting for ourselves. So if you're coming to TPF or if you're nearby, registration's opening soon. Make sure you go to Texas Pinball Festival here in March, and we'll see you there. We're going to bring this machine. All right, guys? Again, thanks so much for all your support. I really appreciate it. I hope you're having fun. I've been really, really excited by the number of people who've been commenting and reaching out to me talking about how they are either starting their own project or taking it off the shelf and dusting it off and been reinvigorated to get going again. That's a huge part of why I've been doing these videos. Is motivation for myself, and I love seeing how much it's become motivation for other people in the community also. So thanks for coming along for the ride. Please do what you can to share some progress pics, even just photos or comments here and there. Post them up on YouTube. There's a Facebook group called Strictly Custom Pinball Machines. That's where I post all my updates as well, and links out to my video channel. A lot of good people up there doing homebrew pinball machines that can help you out, and just would love to see the pictures and the progress of your machine, no matter where it's at. If you're just sketching things out, thinking about it, or if you're almost done, put on the polishing touches, we would love to see it, okay? Share the work. If you haven't started your own machine yet, guys, why not? Get on it. Lots of other people are doing it. No pressure, but I'm just saying, you can do it, okay? It's easier than it's ever been before. There's so much great stuff for us to rely on. Thank you so much, everybody. Really appreciate it. We'll catch you next time.